Was that like the toughest thing you encountered? Like,
In my life? Hell no.
no.
No, not even
Well,
close.
where does it
It's kind of hard to judge because I had so many other people trying to smear my name for other unrelated shit around the same time. So it was kind of like all.
just this whole time though? Just not
Yeah.
the whole time. How
Oh.
difficult was that? Like
It was
what-
difficult.
It's,
it was
top, it's top
definitely.
5.
It was
top
up
5.
there.
Was it top 5?
I've been through a lot of rough
Top 3?
shit. It was probably. I don't want to give it a ranking, but,
But it was up there.
it was definitely one of the harder things I've had to deal with in my life.
Right.
But it wasn't just if it had just been like 8 people left the show or whatever, that wouldn't have been like the hardest thing. It was just that so many other people took
was
the
the
opportunity
backlash.
to attack me.
Yeah,
and it's like,
that's
oh,
what
he's,
I'm talking about.
he's
I'm
in
not
this
talking
moment
about
of
them.
weakness. Let's just fucking gang up on him and like like that. The cumulative whole of all that was.
Why
the
do you
tough
think
part.
that happened?
Well, I mean, I think in large part it was just like people realizing that, like, I mean, they were so close to the business, they could see what the business was. They could tell how much money the business was making from certain things or whatever, and they felt like they could do it on their own. So they decided to dip out at a time that they felt was optimal for them. And I mean, there is a part of me that's like, damn, maybe if I had kept closer relationships with certain people, or if I had stayed a little bit more tapped in or been like more real friends with certain people, then maybe that wouldn't have happened. But ultimately, I kind of feel like it was going to happen either way, regardless. So, I mean, I'm not beating myself up over it.
You think it would have happened if you had like tighter relationships with people, and if certain things were like, if things were just a little different, you think the same thing would have still happened?
Partially, but I feel like part of it is just the fact that I ended up having a ton of dependents. Like there was many people who left who were basically complaining about money, and they were complaining about money in a situation where I was already like basically losing money by employing certain people, or certain podcasts that we'd be making, and the dollars and cents were just like super obvious to me, like, oh, we're spending X amount of dollars to make this podcast happen, and then we're not bringing in that much money from it, and it's not like we're like losing our shirt on it. But it wasn't, it's like, basically, like, I felt like a lot of people just...
If a record label finds themselves not recouping too many times, they got to part ways. So it's just like, it's a part of business at the end of the day, that part.
The tough part was just that, like, I had to then try to make the podcast keep happening when I didn't really have any time to, like, really, like, try people out or whatever. Like, that's one thing with Joe Budden when his host left, when Rory and Mal left, he already had homies who it seemed like he was kind of like gearing up. Like even you, I did the podcast a couple different times like without Brick Baby coming in. Thank God for Brick Baby, because I feel like he was somebody that kind of like got on my ass and like lit a flame under my ass. I'm sorry for talking about my ass so much, but like he kind of like got me a little bit like hyped up to like really go with it and stuff. But
Yeah, I definitely had to stand in your corner.
Right.
Because I remember
Shoot
having that
that.
conversation with you. I was standing right over here and I was kind of thinking in my head like, damn, like is Brick Baby too crazy? Is he too fucking sketchy with all the weird shit that he's involved with, whatever? But I'm glad we gave it a shot.
Yeah.
What was your original goal for No Jumper?
I mean, the original goal was just for me to fucking do interviews with all the underground artists and like YouTubers and porn stars and whoever the fuck I was around. Basically, because like I had been grinding BMX content for like 10 years. And it's like all of a sudden I had opportunities to interview people outside of BMX. And BMX was like what I had made a living doing. But then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I can break out of this. And everybody who's in like a small niche, you always want to like do bigger stuff. I see that with the poker shit all the time. I know tons of poker YouTubers and shit, and they just want to do something bigger. But it's like when your whole audience, if you have 100,000 subscribers and they just want to see you talk about this one thing, it can be really difficult to break out of that, And No Jumper was just me realizing like, oh, I have an opportunity to talk to all kinds of people outside of bike riding, and that was basically the beginning of it. But that's like what happens is that you have one thing work for you with a brand or whatever, and then as time goes by, that thing that you were doing becomes less special. Like all of a sudden everybody's interviewing underground rappers, everybody's interviewing everybody now. And it's like as time went by, like because the whole idea of just having like a bunch of friends who are on the channel or like a bunch of different cast members, that wasn't even a thing until like 2020. That wasn't a thing until the pandemic. That's when AD started coming around, and that's when we started to kind of like build it out, so it was like a bigger cast of characters and shit.
What made you like come up with that idea
with
like,
AD
versus not just AD, because before AD it was House Phone, Cam Girl,
True.
all of them. So at first it was just you.
I was in jail this whole run. Too.
Yeah, at first it was just you, and then I
crazy.
seen like, you know, House Phone, Cam Girl, and them. They had like a little group that they would have shows without you, right?
They were doing that for a little bit, yeah.
Right. And then like how did you come up with that idea?
I mean, because when we had the store and everything, it was like there was just so many people around
Right.
that I was like, oh, we gotta like find a way to like have some of the homies like
To do this without it being a reality show.
yeah,
type
but
shit.
but actually when I look back at that time of being on the store, I was so lucky because I had so many random people coming through and just was meeting people constantly. And I would love to have that opportunity now because now we're out here like kind of isolated and shit,
Yeah.
and it's like way harder for me to just meet random people.
Yeah.
I bet I met a ton of people during that time period that now I would look at them like, oh my God, that person would be perfect for the podcast or whatever. But
That's
I
called
wasn't
being in the
necessarily,
field. You're not in the field no
I'm not
more.
in the field. But then I think about having a store sometimes, and it seems like a dope idea, but it's also it
dangerous
seems
as fuck.
it's dangerous. It's just risk. It's just like you're gambling day by day
Yeah.
because anything could happen. Even if
Yeah.
you have security, whatever, it's like some different shit could happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Security clap a nigga.
Right.
But
And
Yeah,
then-
some
at
of
the
them.
end of the
Did
day,
you-
but the people clap back too. Shit.
Did you think No Jumper was gonna get as big as it did?
No. Not at all. Nah, definitely not. But I mean, it's been through so many different stages. Like if you were to ask our fans in 2016, 2017, what do you like about No Jumper? They would have said, I like that he interviews all the underground rappers early on, and I like that the store is cool and there's like vlogs of everybody hanging out at the store. And then if you were to fast forward to like 2021, they would have been like, oh, I like the friends, the camaraderie, like all these guys like
Right.
doing pods together or whatever. And it's like, in my head, it's like, I know that probably a couple of years from now, people are going to
It's
have
a new
something else
chapter.
that they're
It's-
like, oh, I
it's
like
a
this
different
about it,
chapter.
whatever. It's just like, kind of always appeals to different things, you know?